Here's a personal message from me, Justin Hitt, the publisher and author of Inside Strategic Relations. Hey, I have a challenge. First off, I have resting bitch face. A lot of people think I look mean, that I'm not approachable, I'm not a friendly person. Now, you may be facing the same thing where there are perceptions about who you are, as well as stereotypes that are in other people's brains, and that's impacting your ability to reach new customers or to gain influence in the marketplace. Now, there are two approaches to this. A lot of people will adapt to their environment by dressing appropriate to the audience. They'll conform to the group, and that works in a lot of cases. In other cases, they will be what's called a maverick, where they'll just do whatever the hell they want, and they'll deal with the consequences where they may not have as much reach in an audience. Now, which of these ways is best for you doesn't matter. The underlying factors are the same. Your audience is always going to be interested in what is in their best interest based on their own perception. So, for example, if you have an audience full of people who like to run into fires covered in Vaseline, and every time they do it, they catch on fire, but they mentally want to do that for some reason. They're lemmings, for example. Then if you say to them that it's dangerous to cover yourself in Vaseline and run into a fire, they will not want to listen to that message. So the message of fire safety would have to be delivered acknowledging the context of their enjoyment of running into fires covered in gasoline. And so our brains are imperfect, and your audience is coming to you for answers to solve problems. So you'll need to figure out what the problem is for even the most irrational audiences in order to connect with them however you are. My argument usually is it doesn't matter how you are, as long as you're relevant to that audience and they see a benefit in who you are. Okay? This is very important. They have to see the benefit in who you are. So you need to understand the audience's good habits, their bad habits. You need to understand their thoughts and beliefs and where they're coming from. Now, the person who wants to conform will conform based on their understanding of an audience, and very often be wrong about that conformity, and they'll fall out of audiences, or they'll chase trends. And so if you look at pictures of them over the years, they're the latest thing. You know, when someone comes out and says, support the latest thing, they change their profile picture to support the latest thing. I think my profile picture is probably 15 or 20 years old. I don't really know. But the bottom line is I take the maverick approach because I don't need to conform to anybody, because I see the world as it is. I have critical thinking skills. I have understood what things are rather than the way I'd want them to be, and I address the world accordingly. Now, again, the maverick has a audience reaction where I come to you sitting in a pickup truck with my Hawaiian shirt on and a beard, and my profile picture doesn't have a beard and it has a suit and tie. And if I don't set up the context, then it can be off-putting. I mentioned the resting bitch face because I've had people tell me that I look mean, but when they talk to me in a consultation, I was very helpful. I'm thinking, well, I'm glad I got you over the threshold of resistance so that you did a consultation, but I'm not sure why you thought I was mean. I do care. I'm a nice guy. I care more about clients that are paying for services, and I care more about clients that are serious about getting results. However, I'm not a terribly mean person. I'm just a very dry and sensitive person on the inside, but on the outside, I'm pretty frank, and sometimes I sound angry. But again, it could be a societal characteristic or a societal prejudice that exists that I have to acknowledge when I work with certain audiences in order to help that audience understand that I know that I do care and I'm interested in their outcomes. So, for example, I was writing a psychology piece about the myth of representation. Now, one of my mentors said, don't publish it because, outside of private clients, because it is a little touchy for people that are overly sensitive. And maybe they feel that they need representation. Otherwise, they don't have any hope that they can actually achieve results. Where in my case, I would just, if I want results, I'll go find the representation throughout history, both from the socioeconomic background, but also the performance. And then I don't care about race or skin color or ethnic origin. None of that stuff matters because it further demonstrates that anybody can get results. So when you understand strategic relationships and you connect with an audience and build rapport early, maybe you've established credibility in advance. And now when you meet with the audience, if you don't look exactly the way they expect you to look, but the first 5 minutes of your presentation, the first 2 minutes of your presentation, you've connected with them and they see, oh, but this person doesn't look like I expected, but they are huge value for my goals and objectives, then people will listen to you. In fact, they may even bond with you more because there is a preconceived notion that people that look like you had the same experiences. And that preconceived emotion that you need representation. You need to see, if you're black, you need to see black people being successful. If you're white, you need to see white people. That's not necessary, because even though some people's brains believe it is necessary, it actually isn't necessary, because I can learn a lot from Booker T. Washington, W.E. Du Bois, Malcolm X, as much as I can learn from other people who have similar skin tones. See, the biological characteristics in today's identity culture is actually weakening individuals' ability to get answers and solutions. In fact, the Nation of Islam Louis Farrakhan did a presentation. And see, I shouldn't know about this stuff, but I do, because I don't really care what people look like. And even in the conforming and non-conforming area, that none of that matters, because again, I'm looking for answers. Louis Farrakhan, who is very anti-Semitic at times, talks about how even the enemy, which I don't believe is an enemy, but even your quote enemy, you can learn from. You can learn from stupid people. From your enemy, you can learn their best practices and mimic them, and then don't do the things you don't like about them. From stupid people, you can just not do the stupid things that they do, and you'll get better results. So again, when you show up to an audience, there are prejudgments. There are things that you need to do to condition that audience to accept you. But that acceptance is not necessary for your success when you focus on outcomes, because if you can reach 2 or 3 people in that audience, it's the buyer that you want. It's the new client you want. It's the person who takes the action you want, not that general mob. Now, we do talk about groupthink, mass hysteria, and other elements that produce that conditioning. So if you are a Catholic and you're in front of an evangelical Baptist audience, you may need to address the Catholic thing, because there are preconceived notions in that audience. If you are a black man or an African American or somebody who has a thick accent, and you come up before a primarily white audience, if you address that, that's fine too. I saw a recent diversity and inclusion person, I don't have his name right off the top of my head, but the state of Virginia has a diversity and inclusion person where folks have asked for him to step down because he wanted equal opportunity rather than equal outcomes. And so he has a different approach to the value of a diverse workforce, and he's being persecuted by people who aren't listening to his whole message, and they're stuck on semantics. So if he's going to stand in front of an audience, he needs to address the semantics. That, look, we need everybody to have an equal footing and opportunity for outcome, but we also must acknowledge that not everybody's going to put in equal effort. And if you're not going to put in the effort, then you should not be automatically guaranteed the results. So he's countering the Marxist mentality of everybody gets what they need despite their inputs, because that's very pleasing to people, and that is attractive to people. But reality of life is that you can give 100 people each $1 million, follow them over 5 years, and they're not all going to keep that $1 million. Some of them will have more, some of them will have less, and it's more individual behavior rather than biological characteristics, socioeconomic experience, upbringing, a lot of other things. It's a very complex set of factors. So when we talk about strategic relationships and we talk about concepts of inside strategic relations, which is the application of connections, is we want to build as many connections before we present to an audience. So before I speak with recruiters, before I speak with potential clients, I want them to have copies of my book. I want them to have seen me on a podcast. I want all the conditioning of that static, serious looking face. And to see the quirkiness, to see that I'm a unique individual, and to don't judge me based on what other people or other experiences they've had. To look at me as someone who can deliver value, because I do sincerely want you to get the results that we're looking for. So before you present to an audience, we want to establish credibility. I wrote a whole book about it, on establishing instant credibility. When you go up in front of that audience, I want you to have evidence and proof and social connection. So for example, how you're introduced and the writing of your introduction, that communicates something about who you are. I spoke at a minority economic development event years ago, about 300 people in the audience, and the speaker before me would be categorized as a white supremacist today. Okay, so he went up there and he's saying black people should do this and Hispanic people should do that, and he dressed the audience as caricatures rather than actual people, and the audience was pissed. Now, by the time I got up on the audience, they weren't ready to listen to anybody of my complexion. And that's fair, because the previous speaker conditioned the audience, what we would call triggered today, because this is back in the 90s, and that is a problem. So immediately I had to convert the audience that I wasn't there to tell them what to do. In fact, I was there to help reveal to them how people like that audience has already had success. So I brought up this young guy who was running a trucking company. I brought up previous speakers, and then I put the onus on the audience, acknowledging that nobody's coming to help them. Okay, there is no outside savior that's going to come help them in this particular economic development. And what we need to do is activate our communities so that we can. So I moved from outsider to insider, but we need to activate our communities in order to get the resources we need. And we're talking about computing resources. And they said, well, we don't have computers. I said, well, can you get one computer? And they say, yeah, we think we can get one computer. Great. Let's put that in a community center. Let's work a program around that. Let's start educating people about how to use the internet in order to find additional resources. But let's not look for resources that are freebies or giveaways. We want to look for resources. And then I leveraged some of the black empowerment and other background that I have an understanding of, in order for the audience to see that I was not there to tell them what to do. I was there just to reveal a possible path. Now, I talk about these things, and I should have cleared this with one of my mentors, but you have to understand this about audiences. I worked for a military contractor. One of my roles is to profile the social cultures and the interactive procedurals for different audiences. We had French military, Egyptian military, Taiwanese military, a lot of different organizations coming in. So I created cheat sheets for the government contractors and for the executives. So when they worked with these individuals, for example, when you work with the Japanese military, we're going to interact with people by seniority. And there's a lot of other factors, but I just created this little booklet for them. And then that's why I have these backgrounds with different cultures, and I study these different things, because it really does matter. But once you break the ice, once they understand your nuances, they are adapting the same way. So they know that Americans are very often straightforward and sometimes insensitive to individual cultural needs. Americans tend to be low culture, meaning we don't have a lot of traditions because they're all kind of blended together. And so when a Japanese person interacts with an American person, they're going to understand the nuances just like you understand the nuances. So once you get past that initial rapport building, once you start identifying the mutual interests and benefits, then you can be more yourself. Things will work together. So when you do presentations, you can conform, which I think is dangerous because it buys into the current culture thing, or the current identity thing, or the current political correctness that we do know changes over time. Instead, be yourself. It is so much easier to be yourself. Now, if you're a pompous ass, and I have been called a pompous ass before, I've been called a lot of things for some reason. I don't really care, actually. And that's probably why I get called these things, because there are detractors. When you have a strong personality, when you have strong outputs and you have strong results, you will always have detractors. We're not worried about the detractors. The clients that I've had for years, 10 years, 8 years, 7 years, the clients that pay the big money, they want me to be me because they're hiring me. They're not hiring some caricature of me. So I'm encouraging you that as we build these relationships, we want to be mindful of what our expectations of the audiences are, what the prejudice of our audiences are. However, to leverage those things to build rapport quickly, to connect on mutual interests, and then also to follow up with those who are interested rather than those that are not. So don't worry about audience feedback surveys. Don't worry about people that get upset about your presentations. Don't get upset with those people who are haters. In fact, you want haters. If you don't have any haters, then you're not doing it well, because there's a juxtaposition between the intensity of the hater and the intensity of the person that's on your team. You want that polarization to a lot of effect in order to find the customers in the marketplace, because you want buyers, you want clients, you want people who bring opportunities to you because of who you are, and that who you are cannot be replicated by anybody else. See, anybody who sees your behavior and tries to copy it will just be a caricature of your behavior based on their biases and their the way they see the world. If you can stay consistent with the way you see the world, very often you'll adjust because you'll learn from the environment, but very often you'll have greater longevity. There is a reason why for more than 20 years I've been creating content for high-income professionals, entrepreneurs, professionals that are upwardly mobile, and high-income producers versus writing for general audiences. Now, I don't have as many subscribers. I don't have as many page views because I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about producers. I'm worried about individuals like you in the marketplace who can actually do something with this information to create significant results and outcomes that benefit you, benefit your community, benefit people around you. And I'm telling you that being yourself is going to make all the difference. Now, who are you really? Well, that's the introspection that we talk about in other places, because you have to acknowledge if you do have personality faults. So in my case, I do have personality faults. I might talk over somebody. I might ask questions that to me sound reasonable and provide a necessary information in order to solve a problem, but could be offensive to somebody. Like I've asked clients, they say, well, I'm doing everything right, but I'm not getting results. Well, are you? Prove to me you're doing everything right. Let's write up best practices. And then they get upset because then they realize they haven't done shit, and they're trying to kind of, protect themselves and protect their fragile ego, when in fact, when we go through the exercise, and those who are willing to go through the exercise realize, I think I'm doing everything, but not all of what I do is effective. So let's stop doing the ineffective things, start doing the effective things, and now we've got results. And so instead of trial and error, trying to be someone you're not, approach every audience as you are. How do you know as you are? Well, that's the introspection we talk about in other programs. In order to do that, because there is a fear of rejection, is to precondition the audience with either free gifts, with podcasts or articles, or how you're introduced, in order to set up rapport early in the presentation that establishes the benefit the audience receives. The benefit is more important than who you are. And then at the end, offer those who are interested to get more information, to make that connection so you can capture a lead, and then build that follow-up to further build up that relationship. Never assume people remember who you are. I am a very forgettable person, and that's okay. It's kind of a gray man attitude, but ultimately, I will constantly go back to my list and remind them I exist and invite them back for more information. Talk about the benefits that they can produce, because there are so many distractions on the internet today. There are just so many distractions everywhere. So again, when you show up as a unique individual who is authentic and valuable, most audiences will convert. Not all of the audience will convert, because there are some bastards out there that have prejudice, or they're They're indoctrinated into a system of believing and they've never challenged their beliefs before. And there'll be problems, but they're not as valuable as the people who either not necessarily agree, but see the benefit in working with you. Because again, if we want to gain influence, if we want to have new opportunities, if we want to be that person who never gets laid off, who never gets overlooked for opportunities, who ultimately can do whatever the hell they want to do, then we've got to be that person which is unique in society. Because the majority of the population, as we've talked about in the mass hysteria and groupthink programs, the majority of the people are just conforming. And they're conforming because they're scared. They're conforming because they believe they've got to be something for someone else. Rather than just being who they are, which is, a unique and valuable individual. The Ayn Rand's minority of one. Everybody is different. Everybody is unique. Would it be nice if people took the time to get to know you? Sure. But in a business world, you need to make it easy for them. Connect with those who matter. And those who matter are going to have relevance in that connection. And then ultimately serve that audience for mutual gain. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this has been about a really heart-to-heart when it comes to being who you are versus who people expect you to be. And by the way, it's not always going to be easy to be who you are. There will be times in society where who you are is not convenient. But again, I hope I'm sharing with you the skills to help you be successful despite the setbacks, the prejudice, the oppression, the everything that you could perceive as being a fault. And even the statement where people tell you how the other person is a victim and they tell you how you're a victim is a rapport building exercise. Not necessarily a good one. But if you have questions about this or you want to explore this topic in depth, visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com, where we have newsletters and you can go to the contact page and ask me questions. And we have lots of resources to help you apply what I call strategic relationships to gain influence, power, and strength in the marketplace. I'll see you in the next one.